mine locally, previous video to this one, and that was just about getting a quick overview of what's happening locally, any kind of stuff that you can optimize in your JS or your critical path, getting things looking okay, but it's always going to be a rough estimate, and there's a great tool called WebPageTest. I was a little bit intimidated by it initially because it looks a bit old-fashioned and clunky and kind of scary with all its graphs, but last couple of weeks I've been using it more and more, and kind of learning what it all means. I still think I only know a little bit about it, but I thought I'd just give an insight into how I've been using it to get a great overview of how app is loading on a real device. So that's one of the interesting things about WebPageTest. It does actually run these performance analysis on real devices. You're not, you can get a feel without synthetic slowdowns on your MacBook or without interruptions of other stuff going on your machine. You can get an overview of how fast stuff's loading. So if you go to WebPageTest, just get a look at that. So yeah, it looks kind of intimidating. I just click on this simple tab, and I paste in. Let's go to the page that I was looking at in my previous video. So this is just a staging build for me, and I'm going to run it on slow 3G because, yeah, although it's a bit depressing that it does magnify any performance problems. That's useful. I do want the lighthouse audit. I'm not exactly sure what this thing means, but yeah. So let's start the test. It does take a while, to run through these tests, and WebPageTest will run 3 tests, and I think that's just to get, because the initial page load would be a bit slower as the device downloads all the assets for the first time, uncached, and then the second and third tests, I believe, make use of what was previously cached. But yeah, it's great to get a good overview of what's happening, especially in the network world. But it's less. It won't give you the granular details of what was happening on the main thread and all the JavaScript stacks and flame charts that we saw in the previous video. But it gives you a really good idea of was all that the stuff that came down from the network, was that all done in a sensible order? Am I pulling things down I don't need? Was stuff taking a long time on different parts of the connection? So I saw some optimizations that I could make on with images to making sure that images were not blocking the largest contentful pane. So, and that can be, anything to do with DNS lookup or TLS connection times, even before you've reached the content of the image. So, yeah, one optimization I made for this site was serving my images or proxying my images through my domain, my songweb.com domain. So all third-party images come via this small little Songweb image proxy service, and that means that during that critical path where we're downloading the JS, but we're also downloading the hero image, what's the main image at the top above the fold, making sure that we're not paying for an additional DNS lookup, an additional TLS handshake. But yeah, I'll go into more detail. So I think it's done the first test, and that comes in initially, and then we've got 2 more tests that are waiting to come, that are waiting to finish. But we can dive into this waterfall and look at how stuff was running. So yeah, we can see overview of a lot of metrics that happened here. Largest contentful paint is still pretty high, but we are on a slow device. It's below 5 seconds, so that's okay, I think. Yeah, so let's just take a look here. It looks similar to what we were looking at in the timeline, the performance timeline in the other video. So the first thing is we've got our HTML. But the interesting thing about WebPageTest is it breaks down this HTTP request into the different parts. So we can open this up and look around. It gives you more detail about the request itself. But yeah, we can see here that we actually it took 840 milliseconds just to do the DNS lookup, just to find out what IP address does this domain point to. And then we've got an initial connection, and then we've got the SSL sort of negotiation of checking that the certificate matches and all that palaver. But the interesting thing is you can see with these subsequent requests, because they came from the same domain, in this case it's the Versal Songwhip wilson.page.songwhip.versal.app domain. These all came from the same domain, so we didn't have to pay for that cost again. And we can see here that the images, this image here, which is the large background image, I was proxying it through the Songwhip domain, so we don't need, although it's a third-party image, we're not paying for this large upfront cost. So these are all purely downloading content. So that looks really nice to me. They're all parallelized, and the image itself is resolved pretty quickly. And then we hit this blue bar means that the document's completed. And then all this lazy stuff happens. So you can see here that the browser starts downloading the manifest and the icons, stuff that's not that critical. I think that's all done like asynchronously somewhere else. We've got a Google Analytics collection event here. And it's interesting, you can see here that GoogleAnalytics.com is a domain that the browser hasn't encountered yet on this particular run. So we're paying for the DNS lookup and the connection, the SSL negotiation stuff going on here. Again, before that quick actual request was sent. Then we got the service worker loading, and the service worker downloads a load of pre-cache stuff. So these are all the assets that are happening that are being downloaded in case to be used offline. And then we've got down here Hotjar, which is another analytics tool that comes in lazily. So it's quite nice to see that these non-critical parts, so anything to do with manifests and service workers and third-party scripts and analytics collection, all these are happening after this critical load line. Without optimization or a lot of this stuff can happen straight away. You can register your service worker straight away. You can collect analytics straight away. You could do all this stuff straight away. But that's all going to eat into your Lighthouse performance score, your largest contentful paint and all that stuff. So I'm pretty confident that although there's always ways you can trim your bundles down even smaller, I'm confident that I've got the initial document, the main hero image, and my JavaScript bundles, and that's it. There's nothing else happening before that load event, so I'm pretty pleased with that. And yeah, we can dig in here and see this is actually an overview of all the origins used, and you can see here that each origin has that cost of that initial handshake setup cost that has to happen before the content download. So that's interesting overview to see what origins you're using. Now, I'm not going to dig into all this malarkey, but I think I've given a good overview of how I'm using WebPageTest to get that final assurance that my assets are loading in a nice order. If I refresh now, these other two runs should be, they're still running. But yeah, once that's finished, we will get a bit more information here. We'll get a Lighthouse score and some other, which is I guess like an average of the three tests. and that's super helpful. But I'm sure there's loads more I can learn about WebPageTest, but I just wanted to give a quick overview of how I'm using it today. Cool. Let me know if you have any questions, and yeah, I'm happy to dig into more details if that's helpful.